final event of Jesus' life, death, and resurrection.
Matthew 26 is a moving exploration of Jesus' journey towards the cross, illustrating his selflessness, love, and submission to the Father's will. It also highlights the human frailty of his disciples, reminding us of our need for grace. Here is a detailed summary. Verses 1 to 5. Plot to kill Jesus. The chief priests and elders plot to kill Jesus, but not during the feast to avoid a riot. Verses 6 to 13. Anointing at Bethany. In Bethany, a woman anoints Jesus with expensive perfume. When the disciples protest the waste, Jesus commends her act as preparation for his burial. Verses 14 to 16. Judas agrees to betray Jesus. Judas Iscariot agrees to betray Jesus to the chief priests in exchange for 30 pieces of silver. Verses 17 to 30. The Last Supper. Jesus and his disciples celebrate the Passover. During the meal, Jesus foretells his betrayal, initiates the Lord's Supper, and predicts Peter's denial. Verses 31 to 35. Jesus predicts Peter's denial. Despite Peter's vehement protest, Jesus predicts that Peter will deny him 3 times before the rooster crows. Verses 36 to 46. Jesus prays in Gethsemane. Jesus agonizes in prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane, seeking the Father's will and finding the strength to face the imminent ordeal. Verses 47 to 56. Arrest of Jesus. Judas betrays Jesus with a kiss, leading to his arrest. Verses 57 to 68. Jesus' trial before Caiaphas. Jesus stands before Caiaphas and the Sanhedrin. Despite false testimonies, Jesus remains silent until he affirms his identity as the Christ, the Son of God, which prompts charges of blasphemy. Verses 69 to 75. Peter's denial. As predicted, Peter denies knowing Jesus 3 times and weeps bitterly when he hears the rooster crow. Matthew 26 captures some of the most poignant moments of Jesus' earthly ministry. It begins with the plot against Jesus and his anointing at Bethany, moves to the Last Supper and the prediction of Peter's denial, then shows Jesus' agonizing prayer in Gethsemane, his arrest, trial, and Peter's subsequent denial. It is a chapter filled with betrayal, devotion, prediction, agony, surrender, and denial. Matthew 27 is a heart-wrenching narrative of Jesus' last hours, showcasing the depths of his sacrifice for humanity. Here is a detailed summary. Verses 1 to 10. Judas' remorse and suicide. Judas, filled with remorse, returns the 30 pieces of silver and hangs himself. The chief priests use the money to buy a potter's field as a burial place for foreigners. Verses 11 to 26. Jesus before Pilate. Jesus is brought before Pontius Pilate. Despite finding no fault in Jesus, Pilate succumbs to the crowd's demands to release Barabbas and crucify Jesus. Verses 27 to 44. The crucifixion. Jesus is mocked and beaten by the soldiers before being led to Golgotha, where he is crucified alongside 2 robbers. Bystanders and religious leaders mock him as he hangs on the cross. Verses 45 to 56. The death of Jesus. After 3 hours of darkness, Jesus cries out and gives up his spirit. Miraculous signs occur. The temple curtain tears in 2, the earth shakes, and many holy people are resurrected. Verses 57 to 61. The burial. Joseph of Arimathea provides his own tomb for Jesus' burial. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary observe where Jesus is laid. Verses 62 to 66. The guard at the tomb. The chief priests and Pharisees secure Pilate's permission to seal and guard the tomb to prevent Jesus' disciples from stealing his body and claiming resurrection. Matthew 27 includes the remorse and suicide of Judas, Jesus' trial before Pilate, his crucifixion, and burial. The chapter concludes with the chief priests and Pharisees securing the tomb to prevent Jesus' resurrection prophecy from being fulfilled fraudulently. Matthew 28 is a triumphant conclusion to the Gospel of Matthew, showcasing the resurrection of Jesus and his appearances post-resurrection. Here is a detailed summary. Verses 1 to 10. The resurrection and appearance to the women. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary discover the empty tomb and meet an angel who announces Jesus' resurrection. As they leave to inform the disciples, Jesus himself appears to them, confirming the news and instructing them to tell the disciples to meet him in Galilee. Verses 11 to 15. The guards report the events to the chief priests, who conspire to spread the story that the disciples stole Jesus' body. They bribe the soldiers to maintain this false account. Verses 16 to 20, the Great Commission in Galilee, the 11 disciples meet Jesus, who commissions them to make disciples of all nations, baptize them, and teach them to obey his commands. He assures them of his presence till the end of the age. Matthew 28 presents the climactic event in the life of Jesus, his resurrection. The chapter also highlights Jesus' appearances post-resurrection and the imparting of the Great Commission to his disciples. This powerful conclusion to Matthew's Gospel assures believers of Jesus' victory over death and his continued presence with his followers.